is lots of things happening in parallel. So we'll just record it and we will share it with people later as well. So just so you know that if people, yeah, people will be able to read it later on or see it later on.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yes.
So what I suggest is if there are questions also from students to students, please feel free to just put them in the chat. We have 4 talks, so we have roughly 10 minutes each, but I'm sure that everyone would like to answer at least 1 or 2 questions. So feel free to post it in the chat. And then please mute yourself so that Sarah doesn't hear herself echo 4 times. And then I'll give the floor to you, and I'll just let you know when the presentation is visible.
Yes, thank you. If anything goes wrong, I'm counting on you, Marcella, to help me out.
You can always count on me.
I will now. Yes, thank you. I will share my my screen now.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Yes, great. All right. So for who doesn't know me yet, my name is Sarah, and I am studying communication and multimedia design at the Hogeschool Utrecht with a specialization in UX design. So for my graduation project, I actually reached out to Keen Design, and the design agency who is also a sponsor for this event. They have their own room, so go visit the room if you are interested in finding more about Keen. And they're also hiring, so get to know the people is always a good idea. And so I reached out to Keen Design, and they were actually searching for an intern who can do a project. So that was a great match. And Keen Public, that's one of the specializations of Keen, asked me to do a showcase project and to design a digital product for a fictitious municipality that they wanted to create. They wanted to create a fictitious municipality so they can show their potential clients what is possible if you don't have the restrictions of an existing municipality. Now, for this, I needed to find a way to make that actually visible. And with Marcella and Jeroen, another colleague of Keen, we chose debt counseling. Because of COVID-19, we expected that the group of people who were dealing with debt would change, and therefore the way that the debt counseling would communicate would change as well. So what I did, I designed a web-based app for people with debt to take the first steps into getting control of their financial situation. It was important that the app was very approachable and accessible because the first steps in this process are very difficult. The challenge in this project was the question, what does this unreachable target group really need? Well, and I'm saying unreachable target group because there's a lot of shame surrounding debt and being in debt. Debt itself is not a bad thing. I think most of these people, most of the people actually have a debt. I have a student debt. Some people might have a mortgage or other types of debt, which is not a problem. It's not really a problem. And it becomes a problem, but when debt collectors seize your paycheck for example. So what I did, this unreachable target group, it was a challenge to find people. I found actually 5 interviews I conducted with people from this target group. And what I realized that they are not only very unreachable, but it's also a group where nobody really listens to because they are the ones that make the mistakes in their lives. So most of the apps or the digital products that are being designed for debt counseling are more for the counselors or more for the municipality. So I think it was really a great gap for me to find this sweet spot where it's actually I am designing something for the people who are in debt. So what I did, I made this digital product. It's a web-based application, and one of the most important things is that it's providing information on a very basic level, and it's very outreaching. If you have all the information about money and money handling, there's a bigger chance you won't be in debt. So a lot of information is actually not going to the right places, and this is a thing that this app can do. So it starts out on a very basic level with it's what tips you can do for your tax returns, or if you have, for example, rent, you can get a subsidy for your rent. Well, it's also a possibility in this app to make an account, and at that account you can fill in your personal details, so the app can give you tips on a more personal level. For example, if you have children, then you are maybe it's possible to get a subsidy for your children's school or stuff like that. Another thing that was very important in this app was that I wanted to make it possible to create a roadmap, because it's of course very hard to start getting help, start getting your payment for your debt. Yes, and this is also a way where you can learn how to make agreements with debt collectors. So that are the two most important things in this app. And for the rest, I am, of course, still working on it. So it will be, I will do some more interviews and usability tests. So that was my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Is there anyone who would like to ask a question?
Yeah, Veerle, maybe you can ask first.
I guess what for me is maybe the interesting one is that I'm not sure how I'm going to phrase this question, but obviously, you know, the toeslagenaffaire was like a huge thing here. So how do you see like this thing of like, on the one hand, you could say the government is against poor people, and on the other hand, you're working towards, like, how do you
combine those two things, you mean?
Yeah.
So how do I combine making an app for the government while people are kind of against government? Is that your question?
No. I guess maybe it's more for like a sense of scale. So, no, okay, you know what? How about the other one goes first, and I'll collect my thoughts a bit more because I'm rambling.
I guess if I understand you correctly, we are talking about trust, right? How do you make sure that you are creating something that people will trust, and how do you trust knowing that they have the right intentions with the advice that you're giving? So it's not so much just having the app, but also being transparent about your personal intentions for the app. Is that more or less what you're trying to say?
I think that's where I'm coming from, or less like, can we? Let's just go with that.
Yeah,
question.
no, that
sounds like a lovely one.
Oh, that's actually a good question. The app itself is you don't need it's not from the government. It is it has a different name, and the app is something on itself. Our fictitious municipality uses it to create to help their people. So they do say, if you are in debt, go here, but they didn't make it. Also, all the information in the app itself is free. You don't need to have an account to get to this information. You do get better information if you provide more information about yourself. So the more details you put in, the more detailed tips you get back. And also, at the beginning, when you do make an account, it's very clearly stated that this information will not go to the government, and it will stay in the app unless you choose to share your personal information. You can do that with, for example, a counselor at any time.
All right, since I am also in charge of timekeeping, thank you very much, Sarah. And we will hand over the digital stage to Eddie, who I saw. Oh, yeah,
Yeah, here. Yeah.
there. Yeah, hi.
Let me share my screen.
Yeah, please do so. Yes.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Eddie Vermeer, 26 years old, currently a junior data consultant for about 2 months. Before that, I studied business IT and management at the Hogeschool Utrecht. And in the span of time, I worked as a front-end developer for over 5 years. So today, start background information, my research questions, sub-questions. I'm going to present my thesis, sorry. I'm going to do the current situation, bottlenecks, desired situation, solution, and closing. So the assignment for my graduation internship before the summer was at the UX Guild within Capgemini. In February, I started my graduation internship. This summer I heb gehaald. The UX Guild noticed that the companies nowadays see the added value of usability testing, and that some of those companies don't really have a structured way of testing usability. Another problem is that there isn't always a UX designer on every project, but usability has to be tested. And that was the question that needs to be answered. So the research question in Dutch, it's weird to translate to English, but how can the testing unit from Capgemini, based on the 10 heuristics of Nielsen, automate usability testing? And to answer that question, I came up with some sub-questions. What is the current situation regarding usability testing within Capgemini? What are the bottlenecks in the current situation? What is the desired situation for testing the usability based on heuristics? And what possibilities are there to achieve the desired situation? And how can the desired situation be built? So first off, what are the 10 heuristics of Nielsen? Jacob Nielsen's 10 heuristics are general principles for interaction design. They're called heuristics because they are broad rules of thumb and not specify specific usability guidelines. It's one of the most commonly used methods since 1994, I believe, to test usability. So the 10 years of heuristics are visibility, system status, and I come up with some examples in the next slides and the rest. So every heuristic can be widely interpreted. Like I said, there are a broad rule of thumb and no specific guidelines. For example, error prevention is one of the heuristics. It helps users avoid making mistakes. So Gmail has this option. Whenever you're writing an email in a web application, you type something as more information in the attached file, and you accidentally push the button send without attaching the file, Gmail detects the error and notifies the user with "it seems like you forgot to attach the file." And this is a great example of error prevention. For example, example 2, visibility of system status. The user must always know where they are, what they are doing, what the result is of the action they took, and get feedback within a reasonable amount of time. For instance, Google Drive, whenever you upload a file, they clearly show the system status. You're uploading a file and you clearly see the status bar of the upload changing. Just another good example by Google. So for time's sake, I skipped the current situation analysis and the bottlenecks, as I maybe even can share them from Capgemini. So after many interviews, we collected a bunch of requirements and prioritized them with the help of the Moscow method. It's must have, must have, should have, could haves, and won't haves. We came up with some requirements. So automated testing of the heuristics, a general tool that any tester can use or any user can use. Provide useful feedback. The tool should be web-based, so accessible for everybody, and provide feedback when a heuristic is subjective. Some of the heuristics are subjective, like white space. So providing feedback on how to fix it is possible. So the desired situation steps, we came up this step-by-step plan, and I modeled it with the UML in my thesis. So in broad lines, these are the steps the user and tool has to do. So in my thesis, I did a little bit more, but then again, short presentation. The user navigates to the tool, user inserts URL, just like tool analyzes the website regarding heuristics, it tests it. The tool provides feedback, error, possible solutions, tips and tricks. User can download or write down feedback in Jira, for example, and user can repeat the steps. Possible solutions. After noted the steps, we've looked into possible solutions for creating the tool, and I held about 10 plus interviews with all kinds of experts. And to summarize, these were some of the possible solution. So a code library. There's technical knowledge needed to load a code library in an existing project, for instance, JavaScript libraries. It's not really suited for all testers and users. And browser plugin is suited for everybody, but every browser uses different techniques for realizing the plugin and limited in use. Like governments, you have to use only one web browser like Chrome or Internet Explorer. So that's not a real possible solution. A web application like a website, always available, no need for technical knowledge. So we decided to make a web application. But how? How can we link heuristics to web element? How do we do heuristics? Link web elements like header, img to heuristics. Well, based on experience and interviews, we came up with a solution to link different web elements like header, images, or anchors to different heuristics. These are two examples at the bottom, like sorry. When you read out the state of the HTML tag, like an header or an image, like visibility of system status, whenever something is loading, show a loader. Just like the Google example, always show a loader whenever something is loading. It's more technical terms with JavaScript. Read out the state of the loader. Does it have opacity or 0, display none or block? Read out the state, and you can check if the heuristic is is good or not. And with that in mind, you can link all HTML text of websites to almost every heuristic, except for the subjective heuristics like aesthetics and minimalist design. Good structure or good semantic code. It's hard to check that because it's subjective. So we came up with the next design. This is my proof of concept. After making sure it can do it with proof of concept design, it looks like a Google PageSpeed score test. But then for heuristics, on the homepage, we made an input bar for the URL to be put in. Beneath that, we create an accordion that collapses with information regarding heuristics. So whenever you put an URL in, you can press Control, of controleren, and the following screen comes up with every heuristic and every mistake or good thing the system finds. For example, zichtbaarheid van de status, visibility of system status. You get warnings. There's no loader with opening the screen. And a few examples. The next screen was an easy contact form, and the realizing the tool or building the tool needs to be done, but we are searching for developers who can even build it. So that was it.
Thanks. I guess the whole world is searching for developers, so you're not alone.
Yeah, the UX Guild is searching for a lot of developers, yes.
Thank you very much. Before I start asking my questions, let's see if there is someone else who wants to ask something. Anyone?
Eddie, I have a question. Is this something that is at the right place at the testing department, or should it be already before developing during design?
Yeah, so the problem they encountered was there's not always a designer involved in projects. For instance, low-code platforms like Mendix or Pega.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of my what I discovered as well in my thesis. Like an easy solution is to include a UX designer in the early stages of developing a website or project. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or it could be maybe part of a CI/CD pipeline if you make it.
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
At least some basic checks.
So to what extent does the tool also provide the developer with a solution, or is the solution always ask a UX designer to help you build
Put
a
your phone
loading
number
state?
in.
Yeah, put my phone number in. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. But because it could be, usually developers know quite well what to build, right? It's just that they are not aware of all the different states that can happen. So if the tool would help them with a solution,
Yeah.
or
So the idea is that when it has to be, when it's going to be built, it it displays solutions like tips and tricks if it's subjective, for example, and solutions when it's the website is faulty, like it doesn't work. That's the idea.
cool.
Yep.
Nice. That would already improve the user experience. Of
Yeah.
course, we would be ruining our own job chances if we say it could replace a UX designer, but at least
It doesn't replace. No.
no.
No, it's for testing only.
Right. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Next person up, if there are no more questions, is Veerle.
Hi. Oh, have a go. Think should not put it. You see it full screen now, right?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay. I had hoped I was able to see everyone, but right now I'm not. But oh well. So hi everyone. I'm Veerle Tijgeler, and today I will present my master graduation project called Emotiemaatje. And Emotiemaatje is an app that supports crisis prevention in the GGZ. And I did it for my client, the GGZ Living Lab. So a bit about myself. I graduated this summer with the Master of Industrial Design at the TUE. And as a designer, my main interest is in contributing to a more sustainable and inclusive society. And I'm also currently looking for work, so I'm very much interested in social service or UX design positions. So why did I do my graduation project? So I've personally seen how damaging a mental health crisis can be. So a psychiatric crisis is defined as a person being at risk to harm themselves or others if they don't receive help immediately. And emotions are a predictor of crisis, and emotional well-being in general is also a very important part of mental health. And in some literature, I saw that tracking your emotions and your stress can help maintain emotional well-being. So in this project, I initially focused on FACT patients, and FACT stands for Frequent Assertive Community Treatment. In general, in the GGZ, then you refer to patients that are under long-term care, that they live at home, they have serious psychiatric disorder, and they need some help to recover on clinical, personal, and societal level. If I talk too fast, please stop me, but
you're all good.
Yes, so my client is the GGZ Living Lab, and it's a joint initiative between the healthcare consultancy AAG, the GGZ institutions Reinier van Arkel and GGZ Friesland, and the TUE. And together they really want to look into how can we use smart sensing technologies for the early detection and prevention of crisis. So in this lab, they came up with the concept of using the smartwatch created by the company Mentec. This smartwatch can detect stress, and to combine that with an application. But then the question really became, well, what should that application look like? How can we present the data in a way that it makes sense for the care providers and clients? And if they're even interested in this development. So for my final master project, I focused on involving the client perspectives in the concept development. So I wanted to design an app that gives the user insight in their self-reported emotion data and their measured stress data. And these things then together could contribute to self-management. So self-management refers to a patient's ability to manage their symptoms and treatment in a way that they can maintain their quality of life. And I guess I really focused on understanding if the users wanted such a tool, and if so, what it should look like. So how did I do this project? So I chose the Empathy Formation Compass as my design research project because I think empathy is a very important aspect when you're designing for a psychiatric crisis. You then just need to understand what it's like to go through that. So my first concept was based on theory, a bit of literature, a bit of benchmarking, and I started sketching, making some sketches. For example, this sketch shows a user getting a notification and then being asked to fill in how they are currently feeling. Then my next step was to create user flows, and I thought this was a very handy technique to really explore the interaction and navigation through an app. And then I hosted some focus groups with another member of the GGZ Living Lab. We talked to the client board, care providers, and the family board of Reinier van Arkel. And in preparation for these focus groups, I created a video prototype. This video prototype showed a chatbot and some Adobe XD wireframes. And with that, I just kind of introduced the general concept, and with that, I asked, like, what do you think of this? And from these sessions, I learned that the target group is broader than FACT. That also is very important that design of using the app and wearing the watch should be voluntarily at all times. And they thought it was good that in the beginning stages, the care provider supports the client with using the design, and then over time, they work towards using it themselves. So in my second iteration, I created a more detailed prototype in Adobe XD. I also started to explore mood tracking with emoticons, and in my interviews, I contrasted this with the text-based chatbots you also see on this slide. And I also did some experimentation with graphic design, creating different characters for the chatbot, and just to see like what would be a very likable, what could really create that friendly feeling. But I also created data visualizations for stress levels and emotion data, and some are very abstract, like the red light, but some are a bit more literal, like the graph you see there. And sorry, need to get back to my script. So I interviewed 4 peer-to-peer experts, and I showed them my designs. And in this context, when we talk about a peer-to-peer expert, it's someone who has gone through mental health or has a mental illness or has gone through mental illness and has received some formal training to support others. Well, to analyze the interviews, I used semantic analysis, and I clustered the design feedback in positive, neutral, and negative categories. And what I found was that the participants overall thought that the design could help support the early detection of crisis. And like the participants in the focus groups, they thought it was important that the care provider gives guidance in the early stages. I also saw that the text-based chatbot was met with more enthusiasm than the emoticon tracker I created, which was surprising for me. And I also learned that time was an important dimension for creating data visualizations that are supposed to give some insight into your own well-being. So I'll close off with my final design. So in this project, I designed Emotiemaatje, the app concept. So it consists of a mood tracking chatbot that sends a notification based on the stress levels that's measured by the smartwatch. And its purpose is to prevent crisis and encourage patient self-management. So in the early stages, the client and the care provider decide how Emotimachi can support their recovery. And in case of emergencies, the app can send a notification to the care provider or loved ones. And finally, it can also create documentation the client can rely on in therapy. So I guess if you're interested, I hope this QR code works, so you can click around the app Adobe XD prototype I made. But here you see the onboarding slides. So I suppose, thank you for your time. Are there any questions? I'll stop sharing my screen. I'll get back to the...
Thank you, Veerle.
I guess I think I went a bit too fast. I'm sorry.
No, it was fine. Are there any questions?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
First of all, the QR code works and it looks really nice on my app.
Cool.
I like it. Yeah, I really like your design, but I had a question. What was your initial, what was the question you got initially?
I guess it's a bit complicated because I did projects for the Living Lab for 1.5 years. So this was more of like a follow-up of a follow-up. And basically I did a project also for the care providers, and they were like, well, we don't want to have this monitoring tool over our patients. Like, we don't like that. We don't want to, well, they don't want to do that. So that's when I was introduced to this idea of like, let's go towards self-management. And I basically took that as a concept and ran with it. I guess I'd say that.
Okay.
Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Cool. Then I think we are quickly going to move on to Tauhid because we are exactly on schedule and I'm super proud of us that we are. So if you could please share
Awesome.
your screen.
Yes. So hello guys. My name is Tauhid and I'm sharing my screen. So can you share my screen?
Yeah, I'm seeing myself.
Like seeing. All right.
Yeah,
All
there we
right.
go. It's good. Yeah.
So I can't see you guys, but let's start. So my name is Tauhid and I am transitioning in and out of UX research from business anthropology. So I'm the friend that you would want to have every day to produce high value work. I believe on a more strategic level, UX research and design knowledge should be the same. So I'm always trying to jump in and out of problem and solution spaces. That's why I'm very much interested to learn more about all of your work. So far I've seen so many different types of work. I'm very much interested to connect with you and learn more about that. So what I'm trying to focus on today's presentation is to think with me on exploring accessibility with Ardent, the company I'm working as a part-time UX researcher for. So the context for Ardent is it is based in partly in Germany and partly in New Zealand, where we are trying to build physical prototypes for oxygen concentrators and ship them to, at this point, to various ethnicities and states of India. So how
Is it me or is he gone?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
No, you.
Oh. The screen is still.
What I do want to explore with you is shortly how the concentrator works. So as you can see, A and B, these are the two outlets that controls the concentrated oxygen flow, and consistent monitoring is needed, not constant. Consistent monitoring is needed for oxygen flow and pressure from the patient side, and if there is a doctor present or a caregiver is present, from their side as well. As you can see at this part of the prototype, the A outlet is active. That's why it shows 5 liters per minute. But the machine itself is very much sensitive to 5 electrical hazards. So therefore, any kind of errors can be fatal. So how are we working towards it? Our motivation to design this concentrator was to make it easy to use and easy to understand oxygen concentrator that can reach every household of India across multiple ethnicities where people speak different languages. As you might already know, India is a country of more than 100 languages. So we are also targeting the rural areas where it can be affected by power outages, weak power grids, extreme humidity, different levels of temperature conditions, and definitely poor roads. As a researcher, as I started learning more about our different sort of user groups and started developing different sorts of user personas, I tried to bring in the perspectives of accessibility and inclusive design into my research questions and into my usability tests. I started with usability tests, but I later on collaborated with my designers and the software development team to bring in more weight into the accessibility considerations. So I started out with hearing impairments, I started out with visual impairments, and testing the designs, talking about the designs in that of way. But I had to focus on, given the practical nature of the design and the delivery dates, into more situational challenges, which itself is very interesting. So let me focus more on that. So as you can see here, I'm based in Germany, in Munster, and an average size studio flat in Germany, you'd see the living room is around 14.6 meters square for one person. Yeah, and you have to register yourself. I'm sure it's the same in Netherlands as well. Let me know if it's somewhat different. I would love to learn more about that. But as we focused on learning more about Indian households, the context where this prototype would be placed, like in such 19.6 meter square room, around 2 to 4 people, sometimes 5 people are present in rural areas. They're sharing the same room, they're cooking there, they're watching TV there, they're using gas stoves, yeah, and just by the window there would be some people, you know, living in another room or living in another house. They can talk through the windows. So establishing the practice of remote ethnography, so doing participant observation, just being there with the users via video call, like got us a lot of information and insights to learn more about the physical context of these, where these prototypes would be situated. So as we focus more on situational challenges, we started considering the basic human element, which is the fight for attention. Although the fight for attention and the attention economy is very much debated in the Western world, it's actually sort of the duality that I explore of accessibility for an Indian household. As you can see in this example picture, the father is teaching the young daughter. The son is just beside the wife. There is an electrical bulb holding out. There is a gas stove where the mother is cooking or the wife is cooking. And everything, all of these interactions are happening in such a small place. So if somebody is a COVID patient here, he or she can easily get distracted where they need a constant or a consistent monitoring of oxygen flow and pressure. So how do we do that? This is what I want you to think with me for the next couple of hours, next couple of days, and let me know if you have any ideas. So right now, if you can look on the right side, prototype version 1.4, I'm actually exploring, I'm actually thinking with my design team about how to incorporate that to get that to start testing on our next round of usability studies. We are thinking of self-checking mode. For example, a patient might like do a short self-check with the machine, with the interaction with the system, just to notify the machine that he or she is present. Or maybe we can introduce a signal from 60 to 80 decibel, which is like a certain parameter for grabbing a person's attention. It actually is from research. I have forgot to include the research citation here. Or maybe we can introduce bigger icons that would, be helpful for the patients, or some kind of assistive technology such as haptic feedback. This is what I'm learning more about these days. Maybe we can introduce a sensor, a very small sensor with the patient when he or she is taking oxygen from this interface. But overall, as I think through, I want to share 3 of my core learnings. Is that awareness is everything when you are design a product for your consumer or users or your fellow people. Context definitely matters, so don't forget about that, and please be inclusive by default. So that was my presentation. Thank you so much. Questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions for Tohit, or maybe you have experience with the question that Tohit is raising here?
I guess I've read some literature about self-management, and I see some. I guess that the challenge of how do you, also with diabetes, how do you make people do this particular activity consistently? I think self-management and in healthcare is probably a key word. I'm not entirely sure. Might be.
True, but these people in rural areas are uneducated, yeah? But like the situation is like that, they need to respond to this kind of oxygen concentrator really fast, because we are actually serving COVID patients as our main targeted user group. So it doesn't matter anymore whether they are educated or not, how much they are aware or not. The only goal that we want to achieve is that we want to like serve them cheap to use, like cheaper and easier to use oxygen concentrators at this point of our design. So that's how we are approaching the goal.
In terms of solutions for your questions, I am immediately thinking about this girl that I follow on YouTube who makes weird robots, and she made a panel where you can press a button for every day of the year when you did something. So it's very an easy, simple design, but then you get immediate feedback on what you did when. So every day, on August, I did something for 14 days because I pushed 14 buttons. I thought about that immediately, and I think maybe something like that you can see what you already did, how many times you already put on the oxygen mask or something like that, is something that came to my mind.
Maybe you can share that video with me later on, Sarah. That would be nice.
Definitely. Yeah, nice video.
All right. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to thank you all very much for your presentation and sharing with us. For me, it's always super nice to see how diverse our graduation projects are. So that's very cool. I think you are all still around for the